Hello everyone, it's Minea in front of Learn Languages HD Audio. Welcome to our English Learning Podcast. So this is a completely new project that is designed to bring English closer to you. Having these shows in audio format is way more comfortable for your busy schedules, and it will make learning English language an interesting process that you can enjoy everywhere you go. So let's get started. Since this is our first episode, we wanted to make it quite conversational. We also thought that it's very important for you to learn the basics before starting this English learning journey. And that's why we wanted to dedicate our first episodes to the general advice and some helpful tips and tricks that will make this process much more fruitful. All of the advice that I'm going to present worked for some of the students. It was very fruitful to them, and that's why we are presenting it to you. But have in mind that different things work for different people. Something that I present here doesn't have to be comfortable or exciting or interesting to you, and you may opt for completely different way of learning. But this is just a general idea, some of the tips for the approach if you don't know where to begin. So my tip number 1 would be don't study it, but study in it. So this is a very general advice, and you can apply it to any language that you're learning. And here is what it means. So here is what this interesting phrase actually means. So when I say don't study it, but study in it, I mean put it into practice. You may have noticed, or you may have not yet, but I intentionally avoid using the word study when it comes to English language or generally languages. Why? Because when we say study, I study 30 minutes, I study 15 minutes every day. That refers to a specific amount of time where we have clear starting and the clear end point. Learning, on the contrary, is a verb that refers to a process. It refers to a gradual improvement. It's something that lasts a period of time. And basically, you can never say, I learned the language. Yeah, I mean, you can, but you can't learn it completely. It's impossible, I believe. Even our native languages, we still may find some vocabulary unknown, strange, and it's very possible that we end up in the situation where we can't understand all of the words, even of our native language. So that's quite impossible thing to say. And that's why I really prefer saying that we learn the languages. Why? Because it shifts our approach. That's the mindset. Whenever we want to acquire a new skill, it's not about materials. It's not about practice. It's not even about the time we invest in it, but it's more about our motivation and our mindset towards that process. So I say, don't study it, but study in it. Basically, you can put your English skills into practice daily, even though you're not living in a country where people speak English every day or where your best friends or colleagues know a single word of English language. How? So you can be listening to some podcasts maybe, or YouTube videos, or you can pick up some light reading like tweets, blogs, non-fiction books, and we may get to it later in the episode, but you can try to do something daily that will put your vocabulary and all of the other skills you have into a certain practice. You can turn your computer on English. Like you can change the language, you can set it to English, or maybe you can Google in English. That's something that's very helpful because it really doesn't take any time and gives you some progress. So you may want to give it a try. My tip number 2 would be chunk it up. So what it means here. I wanted to demonstrate with this first advice a little bit that we actually don't need a lot of time for learning the language, right? Like, we all have 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes. It really sounds insignificant, and it is insignificant because like 10 minutes of 24 hours a day we have, it's really not a big deal, and we will spend it on something else otherwise. But it definitely brings a lot of progress to you when it adds up over time. If you just set 10 minutes a day and 7 days a week, so you have 70 minutes at the end of each week, like it's over an hour of your time dedicated to learning English language a week. And when some time pass, you'll definitely learn a lot only using those 10 minutes. Like, that's a very simple math. So I want to tell you that you can start it now. You don't have to wait until you finish exams. You don't have to wait until your kids go to school or when you have that 1 day a month free. Why? It's very clear, because if you do a certain thing consistently every day, no matter how much time you invest in it, you will be able to get a lot from it. Why? Because it creates a habit. You're making a momentum, and that momentum leads to a habit. And when you get to a habit, when you get to a point when something you do is a habit, it's no longer difficult, it's no longer boring, it's no longer a chore that is hanging above your head, it's no longer something that you have to get yourself to do. Basically, that becomes something that you can't imagine your day without. So learning the language, learning English would be your daily practice, would be something that is as easy and as simple for you as brushing your teeth, like as necessary as that. And as instant as that. You won't have to think about it twice before you do it. So that's why it's very good for you to maybe start with something small, but start now and do it on a longer period of time, over a longer period of time, but consistently. So trying not to make huge gaps. Maybe you can't afford every day, but maybe every second day or maybe 3 times a week would do for you, but just set some goals and try to be consistent with it. Tip number 3 would be don't translate. Well, this may be easier said than done. My practice in English language education show that a lot of students get really pushed back only because they have that habit of translating in their heads. And let's be clear here, let's just pause a minute before we say, oh, it's impossible, I can't do that. Just pause a second and think about it twice. Let's say your native language is Italian or German, and you're trying to learn English. You cannot say completely the same thing in Italian or German and in English. Or in Italian and German, we don't have same words, 100% same words in all of the languages. You cannot convey same meanings. So that's why if you want to learn a language well, and if you want to become fluent, it's very important to give up that habit of translating in your head because of that reason. Translation is a science. It is a completely different field of language education, and translators do very, very difficult job. So trying to illustrate very, very closely meanings that original author had in their minds and in their saying. So that's one of the reasons why you should stop doing it. And the second one would be, well, you're wasting a lot of time. When you're trying to do that, in written language, it's not that catastrophic because you have plenty of time. And when a second person reads what you wrote, they may not notice that. But if you're talking, if you're in a spoken communication, and chances are that you want to learn language because you want to use it in real life situations, well, that's gonna cause you some trouble. You will have some uncomfortable pauses, and that's gonna shrink your confidence, which you definitely don't want to happen. So try to cut it out. And how you can do it? Well, just be minimalistic. Use the words you already know and don't look for anything else. Try doing that. I promise you, if you just try doing that for maybe 5 days, afterward, you will never have need for it. There is another reason why is that important. When you start small, when you start from creating sentences only from words that you know, after some time, you will be able to learn much more rapidly. Because when you do that, you're pushing yourself. You're using and you're kind of building on what you already know, and you will be able to bring back vocabulary that you're acquiring much faster. So that's a very important thing to do. My next tip would be a little bit more concrete. So one of my really close friends once gave me advice, and at that point she was already fluent in 6 languages. And she told me that her number one tool for learning a new language or generally practicing her language skills, no matter how advanced or not advanced she is, was interview. She uses interviews of people who speak the language she targeted as their native language. And that is really amazing. It was a game changer for me for a number of reasons. Firstly, you're building your sentence structures, you're building your slang vocabulary, you're putting grammar into practice, and you're listening to some very interesting collocations. It's very rich. You can enrich your vocabulary and generally your skills. You're sharpening your listening skills and also your speaking skills after some time, because you'll be able to reproduce that. You're maybe strengthening your accent. It gives you a lot of benefits. But on the other hand, you're getting knowledgeable in a variety of subjects. So if you're picking a person from the field that you're interested in, let's say you like sports, and then you take some NBA player and you watch their interviews after games, or maybe you're more into movies, so you're watching the interviews of famous producers or actors that are native English speakers. Well, you're also going to learn a lot about industry. You're going to learn a lot about the subjects that they are talking about and that they are experts in. And that's another reason why I definitely believe you should give it a try. Next, I have some other resources that are going to make learning English a fun process, but also very beneficial. Watch movies. Watch movies, and I really advise and cannot recommend it enough, do it with subtitles in English. That's the key word, in English. So why do I say that? A lot of research showed that when we integrate a couple of senses at the same time, we are going to learn more. That learning session is going to yield much more of a product than it would do if you were using just like one of your senses. So for example, you're reading a book, and I'll get to that later. It's very important. But let's say you're reading a book passively. And on the other hand, you have watching a movie with a subtitle. When you're watching a movie, your listening skills are active. When you're watching a movie with subtitle on, English subtitle, at the same time you're listening and you're also reading, you're seeing that. And instantly you have higher chances of learning more of the vocabulary than you would if you were just passively turning the pages. Then I said books. That's another thing that I can't recommend enough. You're also building your reading skills that are necessary for your day-to-day life, for your work, for your education, no matter what you're into, or for your general literacy. your concentration. It's great for a number of reasons. But when it comes just to language perspective, I believe that reading is something that you can do for fun, that you can do for gaining knowledge, and that you can do for gaining a lot of vocabulary. Aside from vocabulary, there are always sentence structures, grammar structures that are easiest to see in a book, and when something sounds interesting, you can come back to it later, etc. Here we come back to the translation. A lot of people would say, well, I can't read because there would be a lot of words that I don't know. That's true. It will happen, and it will always be happening. Maybe later it would not be that obvious. Maybe that number of unknown words would shrink, but it would still be happening. And of course, it happens in our native languages too sometimes. So what is an advice here? Generally, we say to students, don't translate all of it because you're losing the points, you're losing your thoughts, you can't follow the story that clearly. And when you just translate in the dictionary, maybe that meaning would not match exactly with what you already have in a book. So the key number would be, the magic number would be checking in dictionary maybe 1/3 of the unknown words in a certain book or on a page. Check 1/3 of those, and for the rest, try to conclude from the context. Even though you may not have a clear idea what that word means, you will still be able to understand it, you will still be able to get a point, and you will be able to use that word later, and when you hear it, you will know what it means. So that's a trick, and please stick to it, try it, give it a try, and you'll see I'm right. Then there are a lot of other tools that some of those we have mentioned already, but I believe that I should repeat it all together. So I mentioned YouTube, I mentioned your favorite podcasts, then we also have books. In that category, I also count like magazines, blogs, tweets, light reading, like comments or something. All of that would do a trick. And when you're choosing these materials, choose something that's interesting to you. So if you're generally into science fiction and you don't like romantic movies at all, don't watch romantic movie. Watch a science fiction movie and put on an English subtitle. It's very important that you focus on words that you're going to use. You're learning the language that you will use, not that you will know. And if you don't use it, you will forget it. So when something is interesting to you, it will be easier to follow. And secondly, you will be using those words, so it would stick to you for a longer period of time. You will be able to build on that base much more of the vocabulary. Another tip I have would be to search online for other interesting resources. There are websites such as edX. There are various apps for learning languages. Everyone knows about Duolingo or maybe Drops. These are not the best choices for learning specifically English maybe, but you will find when you just open your Play Store, you'll be able to find a lot of other applications that will make learning a fun process to you. edX is a website that offers free university or courses from other certified institutions, and you can find it in other languages, so you can get use of those materials and build your English skills and your other skills at the same time. This may sound as a lot, but let's summarize it quickly. So the key points, the key takeaways here would be to just start. Start with small goals. Start no matter how much time you have to spare on learning English language at a moment. And over a certain period, you will have a great cumulative effect and you will be amazed at how much you have achieved without even noticing. After some time, it will all become habitual to you. It will become very interesting and necessary, and I promise that you will enjoy it. So, thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for joining me. Once again, it's Minea in front of Learn Languages HD Audio. Stay tuned for other episodes. Next week, we are bringing you something very interesting, so make sure to follow up. If you have any questions or you want to give us some advice or some ideas for new episodes, make sure to leave comments below. Thank you once again. Have a great day. Bye bye.